So you can see the toe here, that it starts as 2 rows that move out and becomes knitted in the round. Now my cast on version of this is very similar to Judy's Magic Cast On, who, as far as I know, came up with the technique. She wanted to knit socks in the round from the toe up, so she developed this way to do it without having to join the stitches together at the end using the Kitchener stitch. My version is just slightly adapted from Judy's Magic Cast On, because with the Judy's Magic Cast On you end up with one row of stitches that are on the needle the wrong way, so they have to be knitted through the back loop to get them straight on the first round. The way I do it, it avoids having to do this and all stitches end up on the needles in the correct position. So I'm going to show how to do this on this video using 2 different colour strands of yarn, which I'm pretending are the same ball of yarn, and I just knotted them together as a slip stitch on the first needle. The reason that I'm using 2 different colours is that it makes it easier to see what's happening with each strand of yarn than if both yarns were the same colour. So to start with, make a slip knot or drape the loop of yarn that you're going to use over one needle. Get the other end of your circular or your second double pointed needle and hold it alongside in your right hand if you're a right-handed knitter, or your left hand if you're left-handed. To set up for this technique, I'm going to put my thumb and first finger through the 2 different yarns, making a loop, and I'm going to hold the tail of yarn out of the way of this, but if you're using just one strand of yarn there would not be a tail. So thumb and first finger go through the 2 strands of yarns, and then I hold on to the rest of the yarns with my middle ring and little finger to keep them out of the way and keep them tight. So the first step, you've got 1 stitch now on the back needle, so I need to make 1 stitch on the front needle. So with the yarn that's in over my index finger, I'm going to come underneath the front needle and over the top with the yarn. That's made the same matching stitch on the second needle. It's 1 stitch on each. I'm then going to do a stitch onto the back needle. This time it's going to be the yarn around my thumb. I'm going to come up between the needles and then over the top of the back needle. So now I've got 2 stitches on the back and 1 on the front. Again, I'm going to make another stitch on the front. So with the yarn over my index finger, I come underneath and over the top of the front needle, and I carry on until I've got the correct number of stitches that the pattern requires on each needle. So to make a stitch on the back needle, you bring the yarn that's over the thumb up between the 2 needles and over the top of the back needle. To make a stitch on the front needle, you bring the yarn that's over the index finger underneath the front needle and then over the top. So I'll just show you a few more. It makes it quite a quick cast on, something like a pair of socks. Oh, I didn't quite catch that. You would use this possibly about 8 to 10 stitches on each needle. So I'll just do 8. So there we have 8 stitches on the front and back needle. Now I'm going to start by knitting these in the round. So what I'm going to do is now put the needles into my left hand and let the yarns drop for now. I'm going to pull the bottom needle all the way through. If you look at the back of the needles, you can see the join and the sort of purl side of the stitch, and you want that side to be facing away with you as you start knitting. The top row is what we're going to knit first. Now, to make sure that you don't undo any of the stitches by accident, the pink yarn, which is on the bottom needle, the stitches on the bottom needle, is just going to come over the top of the grey yarn. And then I'm going to pick up the grey yarn. That just loops it behind, so stops the stitch falling off or becoming a non-stitch. And then I'm just going to start knitting, and I'm going to knit all the way along these stitches. Now I'm knitting continentally, but the procedure would be the same if you knit with the yarn held in your left hand. when I get to the end of that row, I'm going to pull the bottom needle back through the left stitches and pull it all the way through the top one, turn it round. So now I've got the pink row on top, and because this would normally be the same yarn and I wouldn't have the pink strand there, I would carry on knitting with the grey yarn. The pink is only to show you the second strand as you cast on. So that's a double stitch because that's my slip knot. And knit all the way to the end. And I think it would be exactly the same with double pointed needles. Now if you look at the back, you can see the pearl side, and that's the front side, the right side, and at the corners the yarn just gets pulled round, and you need to pull it fairly tight at the corners to stop the stitches from getting too loose and baggy. And then you keep going round and round the stitches like this, and eventually you will end up with a toe. This toe's got increases as well to widen it to go across the foot, but the procedure is the same, and you can see with that purple stripe just how the stitches come all the way around in a circle from those 2 rows of cast on stitches. So I'm now going to repeat the process but using the 1 strand of yarn like you would normally use for casting on a pair of socks. It's a little bit similar to the long tail cast on, because with the 2nd strand of yarn you need to leave enough of a tail to make all your stitches on 1 needle, and also leave enough to be able to weave in the end when you finish knitting. So I folded this yarn for a sock cast on, which will be about 8 stitches, so not a very long tail is needed. I'm going to drape the yarn over the needle on the back and then put it through my fingers and thumb exactly as I did before, with grasping hold of the rest of the yarn and the tail with my other fingers in the hand. So the yarn is currently just sitting across the back needle. So this makes my first stitch on the back needle, and now I need to make the first stitch on the front needle. So the yarn that's over my index finger, I'm going to bring underneath and over the top of the front needle. 1 stitch is now on each needle, so I need to make 1 on the back needle. So the yarn on my thumb is going to come up between the 2 needles and then over the top of the back needle. To make the same stitch on the front, the yarn over my index fingers coming underneath and over the top of the front needle and down between the 2. And I'm going to repeat that, so thumb yarn through the middle over the top of the back needle. To make the stitch on the front, yarn on index finger is coming underneath the front needle, over the top and down between the middle. And I'm going to keep doing that until I've cast on all my stitches. I'm just going to do 6 for now. So there's my 6 stitches on the needle, the back of which is a pearl. Now when I would start knitting, I just take 1 yarn over the top so that they're twisted on the back so that the last stitch doesn't fall off. If you're looking at the top needle, the front leg of each stitch is sitting towards the right and the back leg goes towards the left. That's how we know that the stitch is in the right place. When you come back round to do the other side, it will be the wrong way. It currently looks the wrong way round, but that's because we're doing it upside down. You would be knitting from this side onwards, and if you can see, it's a bit difficult to see because it's quite tight, but the front leg, probably in the last stitch, that's easiest. That last stitch, the front leg is also sitting to the right, so you'd start restarting on this side, moving that way. So again, all stitches are in the right position, and none of the stitches need to be knitted through the back loop. Thank you for watching. Good luck with your sock knitting, and have a nice day.